It started with a look. Just one glance that lasted a second too long, and everything changed. I never expected my life to spiral the way it did, never imagined that the line between right and wrong could blur so quickly. But sometimes, when you're feeling lonely, unnoticed, or just lost, the wrong kind of attention starts to feel comforting. That's exactly how I ended up here, sitting alone in a quiet house, a broken ring in my hand, and a marriage I destroyed because I couldn't resist something that never should have happened. My name is Rachel. I'm a wife, a mother, and until recently, I thought I had a fairly ordinary life. My husband, Eric, and I had been married for over 20 years. Our son, Josh, had just turned 18 and was finishing high school. Like any other parent, I was used to the noise of his friends coming and going, the late-night laughter drifting through the walls, and the occasional empty fridge after a weekend hangout. But one day, one of those friends stayed behind a little longer than usual, and that's when the trouble began. His name was Tyler. He had this easy smile and a confidence that most boys his age only pretended to have. He was polite, charming, always helping out around the house or offering to carry groceries. At first, I saw him as just another kid in our home. But the way he looked at me, like he saw something in me that had long been forgotten, caught me off guard. I should have shut it down. I should have reminded myself of the boundaries. But instead, I let it linger. And slowly, that attention became addictive. I didn't go looking for anything. I wasn't unhappy in my marriage, not really. But over time, the spark between Eric and me had dimmed. We barely talked about anything beyond the basics: bills, schedules, errands. It felt like we were just two people sharing a roof. And then came Tyler, young, present, and somehow making me feel alive again. At first, it was harmless. A few extra conversations. An inside joke here and there. But deep down, I knew something was shifting. One evening, when Eric was away on a business trip and Josh was out with friends, Tyler stayed behind after helping with a leaky kitchen tap. It was supposed to be nothing. Just a thank you glass of lemonade, a brief chat. But that moment turned into something I couldn't undo. And from that day on, everything I knew, everything I had built, started to unravel. I tried to convince myself it was just one mistake. That it wouldn't go further. But secrets have a way of creeping into every corner of your life. And the more I tried to hide it, the more obvious it became. Until the night everything came crashing down. Until Eric found out. And in a single, shattering moment, the life I had carefully held together was gone. But that night wasn't even the worst part. What happened afterward was something I never saw coming. After Eric found out, there was just silence. Not shouting, not crying, just that kind of silence that feels heavy, like it's pressing down on your chest and won't let you breathe. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said everything. It was like I had turned into a stranger overnight. He just stood there, frozen, while I tried to find the words, but there weren't any. How do you explain something you don't even fully understand yourself? The days that followed were a blur. Eric moved into the guest room without saying much. We stopped eating meals together. The house that once felt full and warm suddenly felt cold. Josh didn't know what had happened yet, but he felt the shift too. He asked me one night, "Are you and Dad fighting?" I told him we were just going through something. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth, not yet. Maybe not ever. I kept replaying everything in my head. How did I get here? I wasn't someone who took risks like this. I was the dependable one, the mom who packed lunches, the wife who sent reminder texts, the woman who kept everything running. But behind all that, I was tired. I had lost myself somewhere along the way. And when Tyler looked at me like I mattered, like I wasn't invisible, I gave in to that feeling. I didn't stop to think about the damage I was doing, not just to my marriage, but to my son too. He trusted me. They both did. Tyler didn't come around after that night. Maybe he felt guilty, Or maybe he knew he had gone too far. I never reached out. I couldn't. I was scared of what I'd say. Scared I'd mess things up even more. The worst part is, I still don't know how Eric found out. There were no texts, no photos, nothing I thought could give it away. Did someone see something? Did Tyler say something? Or was it just a gut feeling that confirmed itself? That's when the real tension began. Eric started acting differently. He'd leave the house without telling me where he was going. He started locking his phone, something he'd never done before. And then one night, I heard him whispering on the phone in the garage. I couldn't hear what he said, but I caught just one word, lawyer. That's when I knew things were far from over. And what came next was something I was completely unprepared for. I couldn't sleep that night. The word lawyer just kept echoing in my mind, over and over like a warning bell I couldn't shut off. I laid there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything I stood to lose, my home, my family, my reputation. I had always believed that secrets could be managed if you were careful enough. But I was wrong. Secrets grow roots. They find cracks in the walls and pull everything apart from the inside out. The next few days were tense. Eric barely looked at me. When we did cross paths, it was like being in the room with someone you used to know, someone who now felt completely unreachable. And then came the change in Josh. He started asking more questions, watching both of us closely. I think deep down he sensed something wasn't right between his parents. I kept pretending everything was fine, but I could see in his face he wasn't buying it anymore. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Eric was dressing differently, shaving more often, even wearing cologne again. He'd never been the type to focus much on appearance, but now, he looked like a man with something to prove. One night, he came home late and didn't bother explaining why. I waited up for him, hoping he'd offer something, anything, but he just walked past me like I wasn't even there. That's when I realized something else, maybe I wasn't the only one keeping secrets now. There was also the growing fear that someone outside our home might know. I kept thinking about our neighbors, about Tyler's parents. If word got out, it wouldn't just be a broken marriage, it would be a scandal. The shame of it all felt unbearable. I couldn't even go to the grocery store without feeling like someone might be looking at me differently. Then, something unexpected happened. I got an email. No name, no subject line, just a message, I know what you did. That was it. No explanation. No threat. Just that one sentence. My heart nearly stopped. I didn't know if it was Tyler, or someone who had seen something. But in that moment, I realized how fast this was spiraling out of control. And suddenly, the real question wasn't whether Eric would leave me, it was what else was coming for me next. I stared at that email for what felt like hours. My hands were shaking, my mouth dry. I know what you did. That one sentence felt like 1,000 eyes watching me. I tried to calm myself down, telling myself it could be spam or someone playing a cruel joke. But deep down, I knew better. Someone knew. And they wanted me to feel it. The next morning, Eric acted even colder than usual. He wouldn't look at me during breakfast. Josh sat between us, chewing quietly, picking up on the tension we thought we were hiding. I could feel his eyes darting between us, probably trying to figure out what was happening in the house he once felt safe in. And then, just as Eric stood up to leave, he said, almost too casually, "We'll talk tonight." That was it. No explanation. No emotion. Just a sentence that made the rest of my day unbearable. At work, I couldn't focus. I kept checking my phone, afraid another message might come through. Nothing. Just that one email. But the silence made it worse. I started second-guessing everything. Did Tyler say something to someone? Was it one of Josh's other friends? Did someone see us that night? I kept thinking back to that moment in the kitchen, how fast it had all happened, how careless I'd been. One decision, and now everything was unraveling. Later that afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't pick up. Whoever it was didn't leave a voicemail. But right after that, another email came in. This time it said, "If you don't tell him, I will." My heart dropped. I felt trapped. Whoever was behind this wasn't just threatening, they were watching. And now, it wasn't just about Eric finding out. It was about losing everything: my family, my son's trust, my own sense of control. That evening, the house felt heavier than ever. Josh had gone to a friend's place. Eric was in his office, door closed, lights off. I stood outside that door for a long time, my hand hovering, not sure whether to knock or run. I knew this moment was coming. I just didn't think it would feel this final. But just as I raised my hand to knock, I heard something: Eric's voice. Low, serious, and not alone. He was on the phone. And what he said next froze me in place. "Yes. She still doesn't know I know everything." I stood there frozen, barely able to breathe. "She still doesn't know I know everything." His voice was calm, too calm. Like someone who'd been planning something behind closed doors. My mind raced. What did he mean by everything? I thought he'd only suspected. Maybe heard rumors. But now it sounded like he had facts. Proof. And if that was true, then what had he been doing all this time? I backed away from the door quietly and went into the kitchen, trying to collect myself. My hands were trembling. I poured a glass of water, but couldn't bring myself to drink it. My reflection in the window stared back at me, tired, nervous, and not the woman I used to be. I felt like a stranger in my own skin. This wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. This was something deeper, something I didn't fully understand yet. Just then, my phone buzzed again. Another email. But this one wasn't just words, it had a photo. A blurred, zoomed-in shot from across the street. Me and Tyler in the kitchen. The timestamp was from weeks ago. I felt sick. Someone had been watching us that night. And they weren't guessing anymore, they knew. That meant this wasn't just between me, Eric, and Tyler anymore. Someone else was involved. And whoever it was, they were getting bolder. I didn't know whether to confront Eric or wait for him to come to me. But as I stood there, I remembered something odd from a few weeks earlier. Our neighbor, Mrs. Harding, had mentioned her new home security cameras, ones facing our house just in case. At the time, I brushed it off as harmless gossip. But now? Now it felt different. Could she have seen something and told Eric? Or worse, was she the one sending those emails? That night, Eric didn't say a word to me. He went to bed early. I stayed up, mind spinning. I logged into our shared laptop, the one he hadn't touched in weeks. I don't know what I was looking for, maybe answers, maybe clues. And I found something. A hidden folder on the desktop, locked behind a password. After trying a few obvious ones, I gave up. But that folder's presence alone was enough to confirm what I feared: Eric wasn't just waiting for a conversation. He was collecting things. Building a case. The next morning, I overheard him talking to someone on the phone again. He was quieter this time, but I caught a name I didn't expect: Tyler. And then something even more disturbing. He said he's not the only one. My heart dropped. Not the only one? What did that mean? Had Tyler told him there were others? Or was this part of Eric's way of punishing me, by planting doubt, by making me question my own reality? That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just a secret anymore. This was a war I hadn't even realized I was in. And I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. The next evening, the tension in the house was unbearable. Eric had called me into the living room, his face unreadable. I knew this was the moment where everything would finally come out. I sat down, heart pounding, unsure if I wanted to hear the truth or run away from it. He pulled out a folder from the table. Inside were photos, messages, and conversations, proof that he'd been quietly gathering all the evidence since the night he found out. "I'm done pretending, we can just move past this," he said quietly. I needed to know the full truth. Not just about you and Tyler, but what else was going on behind my back. I swallowed hard. It felt like my whole world was crashing down at once. Then he dropped the bombshell. "Tyler told me you weren't the only one." My stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Eric looked me straight in the eye. "He said you'd been seeing someone else. Someone from your work." I couldn't believe it. I had made mistakes, terrible ones, but I hadn't crossed any more lines. Or so I thought. I realized then that the cracks in my marriage were far deeper than I'd imagined. Eric continued, "I called her." I asked. "And it's true. You've been lying to me all along." I felt like I was suffocating. The walls were closing in. All my secrets, all my mistakes, they were laid bare. But before I could respond, Eric's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, his face turning pale. "It's from the person who's been sending the emails." He showed me the message. "Meet me tonight. We need to talk." Fear and curiosity pushed me to agree. Later that night, we drove to an empty park where a figure was waiting in the shadows. As we approached, the figure stepped into the light. It was Tyler. He looked nervous, almost regretful. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," Tyler said, voice shaking. "I told Eric everything because I wanted to protect Josh and to stop the lies." I looked at him, realizing this young man was tangled in a mess far beyond what I expected. Then Tyler dropped the real shock. "I'm not the one sending those emails. It's someone else. Someone who wants to tear your family apart completely." Eric and I exchanged worried looks. Tyler handed over a file from his jacket, a series of messages between the anonymous sender and another person. The name caught my eye. It was Josh. My heart sank. Could my son really be involved in this nightmare? I had never imagined that the betrayal would come from within my own family. But as I looked at Eric's face, I knew we were far from done. Our marriage might be broken, but the fight for truth and forgiveness was only beginning. And in the darkest moments, sometimes the biggest surprises come from the people you least expect. After that night in the park, everything changed again. Eric and I had to face truths we never wanted to admit. Josh had been struggling in silence, caught in his own confusion and anger about our family falling apart. He wasn't the mastermind behind the emails, but he had gotten involved with someone online who was stirring up trouble, feeding on our chaos. It was a painful realization that even our son was hurt by the fractures in our family. Tyler's honesty helped us start to piece things together. He apologized for his role, expressing regret for the pain caused. Eric and I slowly began to have conversations, difficult ones, about trust, forgiveness, and what our future might look like. The damage was real, and some things couldn't be fixed overnight. But facing the truth was the first step toward healing. For me, the hardest part was accepting responsibility, not just for the affair, but for the choices that led me there. Loneliness, distance, and silence had created a space I shouldn't have filled with secrets. It was a painful lesson in how important communication is in any relationship, especially marriage. Eric and I decided to take time apart, not as an end, but as a chance to reflect and rebuild individually. We committed to family therapy with Josh, knowing we needed to heal together as much as we needed personal space. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was one that brought a sense of hope. Looking back, I realized that mistakes don't define us, how we face them does. The story of my infidelity isn't just about betrayal, it's about the messy, human parts of life that many don't talk about. It's about pain, forgiveness, and the chance to grow even when it feels impossible. If there's one thing I want anyone watching to take away, it's this: no secret can stay hidden forever, and no broken heart is beyond repair if you're willing to confront the truth. My marriage may be over in the way I once imagined it, but life goes on, and sometimes, the hardest moments lead us to unexpected strength. Thank you for listening to my story. If you're going through something similar, remember, you're not alone. And sometimes, facing the hardest truths is the bravest thing you can do. 25.